Please have you checked? So please, let me start the event, sir. Mr. Amit Yadav, Director General of Foreign Trade, Government of India. Shri Nalin Kohli, past Chairman ESC and Chairman India SOF. Shri Sanjeev Narayan, past Chairman ESC. Shri Vinod Sharma, past Chairman ESC. Shri Gurmeet Singh, ED ESC. Ladies and gentlemen, very good afternoon, namaskar. It is my privilege to welcome you all this afternoon for the interactive session with Shri Amit Yadav ji, Director of Foreign Trade, Government of India. Sir, we are extremely thankful and grateful for you for having spared the time to interact with the Indian electronic industry exporters today. Shri Amit Yadav ji, while holding important position as DGFT since November 19, and even prior to this, has always been a great support for the council and its members, and we acknowledge and thank you for your help and activism always, sir. Just a brief on ESC, we represent about 2,300 exporters from electronic and software industry, and have been witnessing the growth of this sector since 1989, the year ESC was incepted. In fact, I feel proud to say that ESC has successfully steered the direction of India's electronic and software exports to achieve an estimated export volume of $155 billion during 19 and 20. Let me highlight that India's electronic industry has grown to become one of the largest consumer electronic markets in Asia-Pacific region. There are numerous factors amplifying this growth in recent years, which include the growth of India's middle-class population, increasing disposable income, and evolving technology and aggressive pricing for the electronics. And of course, the introduction of the new technology like IoT, 5G, are rapidly increasing the adoption of consumer electronics and will boost the market size exponentially in next few years. In fact, India is already the Asia-Pacific's fastest growing smartphone market, and we expect that trend to continue with the recent policy announcement by Government of India. In addition, the projects like Smart City, Digital India, connected devices, digital marketing, wallet have further boosted the demand for IoT within the domestic market and has also opened huge opportunity for Indian companies to ride the tech drive and become formidable force in the IoT business of the world, which is estimated to be about $800 billion USD by 2025. So India has started picking up both in manufacturing and exports, but because of this pandemic, we have experienced sudden disruption in the production, exports, and supply chain. Migration of workers has further added to the woes of the industry. Although the government is very quick, has been quick to resolve some of these issues, however, our MSME sector, which we represent largely, is still fighting to restore normalcy. During our recent interaction with Honorable Commerce and Industry Minister Shri Piyush Goyal ji on 14 July 2020, we highlighted that the entire country support government initiatives and decisions, Atmanirbhar Bharat Isha Pantha, as envisioned by Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji, to catalyze India's transformation into economic powerhouse. Setting this mission as our goal, we at ESC plan to steer our members to work and achieve this objective to further get onto the track which we say Atmanirbharta se Niryat ki raah. One of the biggest challenges for the Indian electronic manufacturing sector is our excessive dependence on imports, especially imports from China. China is the largest manufacturer of electronics in the world and also the largest exporter, while we also import as high as 60 billion worth of electronic equipment, assemblies, components, and raw materials every year, and majority of them come from China. However, due to recent issues with neighboring countries and policy stand taken by the Government of India, it has affected the import and the manufacturing, and the electronic sector is impacted heavily, sir. So, as we said, Atmanirbharta se Niryat ki raah, to reach on this raah, we actually need a lot of action, both from the industry and the government, especially on the policy front. And we are very happy that a lot of initiatives and actions have already been taken. We ask our members to share their issues, and based on that, we have listed some of the broader issues which we will discuss during this time, where our members will also share the issues and problems which we would request you to look into it. The broader issues I've compiled here, sir. I'll say one of the broader issues is custom procedural issues. Although a lot of streamlining has been done, even the faceless assessment has been started. But whenever we do something, we have challenges and we need to address to those challenges. So that is one of the broader issues we have today. Then another issue that we are having is discretionary powers. Sometimes these discretionary powers are used for the good, sometimes not for the good. So as industry, we have this issue, and we would request those powers to be defined and under what circumstances they can be used. Then we have certain issues on trade barriers which are required for our survival. And then there are some trade barriers which are to be removed as they are proving to be counterproductive. And last but not the least, MEIS. The industry is in a state of utter confusion, though we are thankful to Honorable Minister by taking the issue in the interest of exporters and his assurance. But we strongly feel that we need to have complete clarity on this, as any confusion will impact the export. As Council, we further feel that there is an urgent need to involve the industry by forming some high-power committee for regular feedback on the issues and likely solutions, so that industry and the stakeholders remain in loop and connected always, sir. We have many of my senior colleagues here in this webinar today, and to give their suggestions and important advices. They have been in the industry and interface in the ICT sector for a long time. Before I conclude, I again thank you so much for your time, sir. And I'll just request now Mr. Nalin Kohli, Chairman IndiaSoft and past Chairman ESC, who despite his issues on the health has always been strong and positive, and I would request Mr. Nalin Kohli to share your thoughts.
Thank you, Sandeep. Good afternoon, Amit ji, my colleagues from the industry. Let me add my welcome to Mr. Yadav. Many of us may not know, but Mr. Yadav is an old friend of the Council. Even before he took over as the Director General of Foreign Trade, I remember when I was the Chairman of ESC, we ran into a major problem on our building, which we constructed. And at that time, he was the Chairman of DSIDC. And we approached him, and he found a solution, which he very quickly implemented. And I think part of the reason now we are in a good building here is because of his help at that time. We also met just before the lockdown, and I had requested him that our hardware members are keen to meet you, and he said yes, definitely. After March, let us meet. Little did we know that it would be a virtual meeting now and not a physical meeting. Sir, we are grateful to you. I have been both in the hardware sector and the software sector. Hardware sector is really hard, and we suffered a lot of inverted duty structure in my products. But I'm so happy that you have put the television on the restricted list. And we need these kind of supports. We are a large market. We can leverage our domestic market to become global players. Basically, it requires two things. One is a certain amount of protection, and this licensing kind of protection is the best protection. Otherwise, a tariff protection. And the second is that in the government procurement, if we are given a preference, that gives us a big chunk of the domestic market, which we can leverage. In many products, we can be global players. And I'm sure under your leadership, some of these issues will be resolved much quicker now. We have a chairman also from the hardware sector, and I'm sure our hardware members will find the environment much better. Thank you so much for sparing time for us. I did have a small health challenge, but I'm recovering from it now, and hopefully when things become all right, we should meet physically. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Nalin Kohli. We look forward for your rejoining the council on activist manner. May I now request Mr. Sanjeev Narayan, MD, SGS Technique Manufacturing Private Limited and past chairman ESC, to share his thoughts. Mr. Sanjeev Narayan?
Yeah. Hello.
Okay.
Thank you, Sandeep. Shri Amit Yadav ji, Vinod Sharma, and Gurmeet Singh, who are here on the dais, and Nalin, who just left. So your department has done commendable efforts for simplification through computerization, like online submission of MEIS, issue of online scripts, online duty payments, etc. And the very fact that today's webinar is focused to help the electronic manufacturing industry through digitization initiatives shows your commitment towards ease of doing business and ease of exports. We thank you, sir, for being with us. So as already been said, electronics manufacturing is a very tough sector, as a large section is covered under the zero duty regime due to ITA 1. Electronics sector is where the government has recognized that there is a disability ranging from 8 to 11%. The electronics sector fortunately now has received the government attention as it is the second highest import sector after oil, where we are importing today almost $57 to $60 billion. The other reason why the electronics sector has come center stage is because it is through electronics, it cuts across the entire spectrum of activity to bring in efficiency and progress through technology, be it industry, agriculture, mobility, medical, defense, just to name a few. Our electronics sector definitely needs encouragement and your support to compete both in the domestic market for imports substitution and also capturing the great export opportunities that are opening up due to changed post-COVID macro environment and the geopolitical realignment that has taken place. So PCBA or PCB assemblies are the heart of all electronic products. And also PCBA is the starting point for use of electronic components and employment generation. So imports of PCBA needs to be discouraged. And we have to find solutions here, which are both in the items which are covered under ITA 1, as well as because of the FTA. Parallelly, the export of PCBA needs to be incentivized and encouraged, for there is a great opportunity in both developed markets, as this enables assembly of end products with minimum labor inputs, and also in developing markets where they are now looking for SKD assemblies to start manufacturing of products in their country. So I believe that PCBAs is the center of electronics. Recognizing this importance of PCBAs and EMS, the government has set up a task force to recommend a package for encouraging both domestic as well as exports in this segment. We will come back to you with specific asks in the next few months once the task force report is ready. In the meantime, I would say that our chairman has already covered. I think one of the biggest concerns of the industry is continuity of incentive policies so that we are able to negotiate reasonably long-term contracts on exports. and also help in better planning. So we request that the MEIS, which has been going through ups and downs, is clearly stated. Also, we know that there's going to be a change in the MEIS and is going to be replaced by an alternative policy. Our strong request from the electronic industry is that whatever is the new compensation that you look at, the compensation should be for the disabilities and taxes, should at least be to the extent of 4 to 6% of the FOB value. So there are a number of administrative requests and simplification that are requested, but we will not spend too much of our time with you, but I'll just share with you. They relate more in terms of the filing and redemption, doing away with the hard copies, MEIS port registration being online, customs accepting line approvals rather than insisting on stamped copies and things like this, which we will share with your office. Having said this, I would like to assure you that all our members are fully committed to grow the sector and contribute meaningfully towards the vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat with your continued support. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us.
Thank you, Mr. Sanjivan, for your valuable input. Before I invite the next speaker, may I request all the members who have already joined, they can ask their questions in the chat so that Honorable DGFT can take up the questions subsequently. So please feel free to write your questions in the chat box, and I will take up the questions later. Now we have Mr. Vinod Sharma, MD of Deki Electronics, past chairman ESC. He has been a torchbearer of the Indian hardware industry for a long time. May I request Mr. Vinod Sharma to share his views?
Thank you very much, Mr. Sandeep Narula, our chairman. Mr. Amit Yadav, who's really a friend of the industry and definitely a friend of ESC. A pleasure to be with you today, sir. And my senior colleagues from ESC. Was lovely to see Mr. Kohli, who's just come back from a small medical thing. So, all the best to you, Mr. Kohli, too. Sir, I'm not going to repeat what Mr. Narayan already said, and partly Mr. Kohli has mentioned about hardware being hard. I'd like to turn the whole story into a story of great optimism. You'll be pleased to know, I'm sure you're already aware, sir, that we have grown in the electronic hardware where we were stuck at about a $6 billion export for almost 5 years. Last year, we broke through that and got it to about 8.4 the year before that, and last year was about $11 billion. So it's almost like a doubling within 2 years. ESC and our report that we had submitted also to Mr. Piyush Goyal the other day, we are looking at an export in the next 5 years, sir, of about $180 billion. So this is almost a 15x growth in what we've been able to do so far. This obviously comes on the back of a lot of optimism we share because the government has really paid attention to this sector. The PLI scheme, which we rest a lot of hopes on, it's been all over the press. So we now have some of the largest brands and EMS companies manufacturing phones in the country. So in the next couple of years, I think these are extremely exciting times for all of us in this business. And we do feel that it's not just mobile phone players, but the components, downstream supply chain partners, lots of MSME companies that will be benefiting from this entire, let's say this hub that we are trying to create in India for electronics manufacturing and exports. What will help them, in my opinion, is the membership that we have at our esteemed council, ESC, which has for the last 15, 20 years been exporting components and products to the world. And so I think your office and the DGFT's office has played an extremely important role in this journey. I would say my request is only to deal with one item, which is the whole DGFT portal. In our opinion, sir, today in the world of data mining, in the world of the information that's available through us through a GST portal, for example, the GST network, we should not be looking at the DGFT portal, in my opinion, anymore as just a place where we have to file a bill of entries to be able to get a 4% MEIS or its replacement of road TEP tomorrow. That would be the tip of the iceberg. I think it's an information powerhouse for all of us. If we can find a way of getting all the relevant stakeholders to look at the site and just get what is important to them, I mean, obviously it cannot be an open site, but all the information on trade, what is happening to the import of items, what is happening to the export of items, combined with, let's say, a global platform such as the one that the International Trade Center at WTO handles, the trademap.org kind of website, where this could become an information powerhouse for all of us to understand what's happening in the world of business as we speak and plan our businesses accordingly. And that, in my opinion today, that information in time, properly analyzed, is far more valuable than the 4% MEIS that we are obviously making a request to be restored as quickly as possible. The second bit about that, sir, is even the filing today. In fact, I was speaking to my colleagues within my company, and I don't want to bore you with the details, but it is a very tedious process. There are several times of the day when the portal is very slow, the entries have difficulty, and especially if you make a mistake, then there is almost no room for correction. A simple thing like the OTP actually comes to me. So every time these guys are trying to do something late in the night because they couldn't do it in the day, it's someone like me as the MD of the company who's got to talk to them. So there are some very simple, I would say, hygiene factors that once you relook at the portal, we can definitely make it something which is far more efficient and far easier to use. And lastly, so under your leadership, with this whole new regime of RODTEP coming in and this very large export potential that we have in this country that we hope as a sector we will do justice to very soon, we feel that both the role of DGFT and a portal like this as an interface between us as importers, exporters, foreign trade practitioners, and policymakers like you is only going to increase. So at ESC, we could offer, our own expert help, I would say, experience enabling such a platform to go through what we might call a DGFT portal 2.0. So with those words, I will put it back to you, Sandeep. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vinod Sharma, for giving us great insight. We hope it will go a long way in having a right policy mix for the industry by the government. May I now request Mr. Amit Yadav, DGFT. All the members are waiting for you, sir, to listen to you and have a roadmap for the future for the industry. Over to you, sir. Sir, you are mute now. I have unmuted you. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, ma'am. I had to take an urgent call. But
yeah, it's fine, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, the Electronic and Computer Software Export Promotion Council, for having an interaction with the DGFT, with a number of your members. And thanks, Mr. Narula, Mr. Kohli, Mr. Narayan, and Mr. Sharma for warming up the whole discussion and putting everything concisely and putting things in perspective so that we can have a meaningful discussion. We've had the way, I would say, the DGFT has organized itself, and it's been a long journey. As I understand, it's probably one of the earlier organizations of the government which had some kind of what you call an IT system 2 decades back, and it has learned, it has improved, I think so some of you may be aware also, which I shared through the EPC WhatsApp group, that we are now in the process of upgrading ourselves from our existing to a new platform. The phase one part of it has been done. There have been some glitches which we have in the last, what some of the members said, which we are getting it addressed, which is the migration of the whole IEC part of it. That part is already covered. The second part, which is being talked about, and some of the suggestions which Mr. Narayan said also, and Mr. Sharma said, were also part of that. How do you make it end-to-end online and ensure that the challenges which you have in the system, the DGFT system, are addressed. So I'll come back to that on the filing part, the redemption part, the so on and so forth. So that's the second thing which is there. But I think so we need to put how we look at this very important sector, the economy, and some of you know that starting point for any technology is the hardware, and then obviously building on the software. And then as beautifully pointed out, irrespective of the sector, everywhere it's used, right from the defense to aerospace to agriculture to any sector. The technology and how it can be used and used efficiently can really be productive, efficient, and provide those desired results. So I think so. Within the country, we have been, which is partly very small parts. We've been in the hardware. Some of the software part is we've been much advanced, but in the hardware part, we've had challenges, economies of scale, and unless the big one comes, the downstream, and so on and so forth, and the various WTO commitments, the duty rates, and so on and so forth. So there have been challenges, but I think so. One part of it will come through with the coming time. It's the PLI scheme, which I think so. For the guidelines and for the committee, I'm also part of that, so I can say very safely that it would be something which have been very encouraging, and we need to see those desired results in the coming years in that part. And once you have the big ones, the downstream and the ancillaries and so on and so forth start coming in. And a lot of it is, we've had a talk in my earlier role in the telecom of how do we ensure that the building block in this sector, we need to get something which is which leads to meaningful production in the country. And I think so the government is aware of it and is ready to provide all the support to the sector which is available. That's broadly we're moving in that direction, and I think so the Ministry of Information and Technology has played a stellar role in the last number of years and in the coming times also. I'm sure they go all out to support the industry, and then they push us and the DGFT for your cases from time to time also. So we are witness to their way of supporting the sector and taking it forward, and the vision they have for the sector. DGFT, I think so. There is a lot of expectation from the DGFT. Obviously, as was pointed out, with regard to how that DGFT can be a powerhouse of information and which can help on the trade a lot, not by doing any incentive scheme. Obviously, incentive scheme is one part of it, but putting everything together, which, and as they say, information is power. So if that information is available, that helps. I think so. A lot of you may not have had the opportunity of visiting the DGCIS site, the Director General of which keeps the statistics part of the government on trade. if you go to the DGCS site, there are certain information which can be made available, which Mr. Sharma was talking of, which it can be made available on a payment to what you are looking for information. There's a whole lot of information which is there, whole lot of analytics they do, and a lot of it is in public domain, and some of it can be obtained by paying per information side, the way they price it. And you know that the way the government prices it, it's not much expensive. So that's one part of it which can be used as a power, as an information base. And I get a sense when Mr. Narula said at the beginning, the cumbersome procedures, discretionary powers, kind of thing. And I think so. How do I put it? In the sense that we would always welcome. We're not saying that we're perfect, but if there are suggestions, if there are, we can sit with some of you and look at our processes, look at our application forms, look at some things which can become a part of the form as part of ease of doing business, and making it, some of it, we have largely made it paperless, but if there are certain requirements, and rightly so, there are certain requirements that besides applying online, you also need to apply a hard copy. Those are certain requirements for the sense of ensuring that those documents are available for posterity. Some declaration with signature, and I think so digital signature, large part of it can be covered. I think so I'm ready with the industry, with some of your representatives who looked at it, and we can have much more smaller group interaction to address these issues. And coming from the sector, which can also give us insights into what we are doing in this our upgrading of IT system, and where there can be scope of improvement, would be a welcome step from my point, and I'm sure my colleagues in the office would also do it. We have now a complete setup, an additional DGFT only looking at the IT systems and this related aspect of ease of doing business. So we having realized that, we're working on it. The way our plan is that by end of this year, we would have the complete overall of the DGFT system, IT system revamp. The export obligation discharge would be completely online. Similarly, for both advance authorization, the ETCG scheme, and the other aspects which we are covering. So I think so. Some of you can look at it, what we are doing, and provide suggestions on what we have done recently, scopes for improvement. It's a work in progress. I can very clearly say that it's not a perfect whatever we have devised, but we can work with what we have, and we will continue to do. The trade barriers and the challenges, and I think so the industry is much better placed than we are on the challenges they have on the trade barriers, which was another thing which was talked about. On the trade barriers, the recent, the way we are working within the government on looking at various sectors, and within those sectors, what we can do so that we get the right kind of investment, we get the right kind of support, we give the right kind of support, and at the same time we ensure that within the country certain things which were neglected or which were not given the support are given to ensure that those are manufactured in India. Obviously, one number of objectives: import less, export more, manufacturing within the country, employment issues, growth in the country, and overall economy. And I think so. We've seen those challenges during this recent last 4 months of COVID time. when we had to work on the ventilators, just for one example. We were not manufacturing any ventilators. We were importing everything. And now we have come to a situation that I was asked right early February to immediately put a ban on the export of ventilators. Whatever may be there, they may not go out. Now we have a situation that we're lifting that probably in the coming days, the notification will come out. So the industry rose, the automobile part of it, and some of the brightest of the brain, they got together and they said, okay, if this is the thing, let's start working on it. We got it. Similar was the issue with regard to PPE and number of now the pharma products. So I think so when the occasion arises, the industry has the possibility and the potential to deliver on the requirements. And I think so we are in those times where there's a lot of expectation on the electronic industry to rise and provide those, meet those expectations, to provide the kind of support for domestic manufacturing, support for ensuring that the integration backward and forward happens. And let's see what one of the speakers said about television. I think so. Mr. Kohli said about it. So let's see how the component manufacturing within the country happens with this kind of situation. I think so. This is what we expect, and that is what we need to ensure that over a period of time, say next 2-3 years, how it moves around. Otherwise, if we still continue buying those components and the level of indigenization still is a very high number, then I think so the objective is not fully achieved what probably the government thinks could have been achieved. So I think so within the given time and the question and answers which we have to take, I can go on and on, but I think so it is better that I get a feedback for the next 20 odd minutes from the members who are participating, and try to the best of my ability to honestly answer what the kind of questions which are there and what DGFT can do. But my invitation through Mr. Narula to your EPC is that if the suggestions both on the cumbersome procedure and discretionary powers, we can have a separate meaningful dialogue on that we will welcome. And the third is obviously on the IT, the revamp work which we are doing in your suggestions. Thank you so much, and I think so. Back to Mr. Narula for the deliberations. Thanks.
Thank you so much, sir, for very valuable insight, and I'm grateful that you have considered my request positively, and we will keep on sharing our suggestions from time to time as and when we get from the industry. And also, I congratulate you for taking the revamp of the entire process in DGFT working. In fact, the faceless assessment is a very welcome step, and it will go a long way in streamlining the assessment process. And we all, as industry members, congratulate you on undertaking such measures. So thank you so much. Though the industry would like to hear you more and more, but since you also want to hear the industry members, we have already got a few questions on the chat box. If, with your permission, I will take one by one, sir, and with the time that you have, we'll try to take as much as questions possible, sir. So now I request Mr. Ashutosh Agarwal to ask his question.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yes, sir. Sir, thank you very much for an enlightening session. We were really happy to listen to you. And to be very honest, like we are into exports, but other than MEIS, we don't know what other things we can avail from MEIS. So my kind request, like if you can delegate ESC kind of training program for all its members, so that how to claim the MEIS process, because there are a lot of changes the department has done for the industry, but sometimes like there are 2,300 members, I believe, in the ESC. Not everybody is aware about the latest procedure to claim the MEIS. So if ESC can initiate and process along with the DGFT officials, so we can do online training like a webinar for this, especially MEIS claiming. And yes, sir.
Yeah, thanks. On the MEIS, yes, there are certain things which we have training materials on that and so on and so forth. What we are also doing is probably in the next 4-5 months, for a number of topics, we would have every week or a weekend with which we are taking inputs, which would be a better, probably on a Friday or Saturday kind of a 1 or 2 hour session on a select topic, and have people coming in and talking on different aspects of trade, which can be capacity building, which can be information, which can be providing various opportunities on right from export financing to probably the various schemes and risk and all kind of gamut of topics which we have chosen. With we're getting those built. I think so by the end of this year, we would have those videos ready, so that those can be then used for benefit of larger, and anyone can just log in and then join those sessions. So we're working on that information dissemination, and technology has come to us. Earlier we were using organizing those physical camps, and we didn't know how many people were actually interested and how many were just participating. But here, spend your time if you think that it's a useful input. So that's important. But for the MEIS, I think so. I don't know because the present situation we have on MEIS is that it goes away at the end of 31st December. So organizing a special session only on MEIS, let me see if we have existing some material on that, which we can share with the EPC, the Electronic and Computer Software EPC, and then they can disseminate. So let me work on that, and let me check on that if there is already some material which we have at MEIS. Otherwise, if we have any FAQ or something, we'll pass it on, and then I'll request Mr. Narula to pass to other members. EPC. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Now, may I request Shailendra Bansal to ask his question? He cannot. Yeah.
My video there?
Yes, you are audible. Go ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon, sir. My name is Shailendra Bansal, and I have a small request. We had lodged our SCAS claim with the DGFT office in Kanpur more than a year back, but we have not received the claim as yet. So, whom should we escalate this matter to?
You're talking of a SCIS claim or MEIS claim?
SCIS.
SCIS claim, you filed it.
Yeah, more than a year back.
It's unlikely because we had given a deadline for July, except the 3 bigger offices where there were large number of cases. As per my report, all the SCIS claims have been disposed of by end of 31st July, except Delhi, Mumbai, and Bangalore.
Okay.
So that is the from a MEIS system and the interaction I had recently with the officials. That is the situation. So please check why your claim, or you drop me a mail, dgft@nic.in, and we will give you a response on that, what your status is.
I'll do that, sir. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Shailendra. Now, may I request Sanjeev Katos to ask his question?
हिमाचल से बोल रहा हूँ। मेरा क्वेश्चन था, ये हमारी करीब 35 साल पुरानी कंपनी है और हम सॉफ्ट फेराइट कोर मैन्युफैक्चर करते हैं। अभी क्या पिछले कुछ सालों से क्या हो रहा है कि जो सॉफ्ट फेराइट कोर जो इंडिया में चाइना से आ रहे हैं, उनका प्राइस इतना कम है कि जो हमारा जो रॉ मटेरियल प्राइसिंग है उससे भी मैच नहीं करता है। तो हमें कभी हैरानी भी होती है कि चाइनीज इस कॉस्ट में कैसे मैन्युफैक्चर कर लेते हैं। तो गवर्नमेंट को देखना चाहिए कि ये बेसिकली कहीं प्राइस का कोई मिसमैच तो नहीं है इंपोर्ट में। और इसके लिए मैंने आपको एक रिप्रेजेंटेशन भी लिख के भेजी थी, तो शायद आपको मिल गई होगी, तो इसके ऊपर थोड़ा आप हेल्प करिए प्लीज।
हाँ कटोच साहब, अगर मैं आपका प्रश्न समझा या जो आपने जो बताया वो मैं समझा, तो इसका बेसिकली आप ये कह रहे हैं कि जो फेराइट्स आते हैं वो चीप ड्यूटी पे, चीप रेट पे आ रहे हैं। सो तो मोस्ट लाइकली देन दिस वुड बी अ केस ऑफ अ डंपिंग।
ओके।
एक दूसरा ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है कॉमर्स मिनिस्ट्री में, वाणिज्य मंत्रालय में, DGTR, डायरेक्टर जनरल ट्रेड रेमेडीज, वो एंटी डंपिंग इन्वेस्टिगेशन करता है, फिर एंटी डंपिंग उसके बाद एक्शन लेता है। तो आप as individual or probably as even as various kind of association can apply for investigation and imposition of anti-dumping।
ठीक है सर। एक दूसरा प्रश्न था कि जो हमारा जो पाउडर आता है, पाउडर के ऊपर ड्यूटी है, लेकिन जो फेराइट इंपोर्ट होता है उसके ऊपर कोई ड्यूटी नहीं, तो इन्वर्टर ड्यूटी का केस है हमारा।
इन्वर्टेड ड्यूटी के लिए तो बेसिकली कस्टम्स एक्सरसाइज करता रहता है। जो कस्टम ने जो अपने 2-3 महीना पहले जब चर्चा की थी इन्वर्टेड ड्यूटी पे, तो कस्टम ने कहा था कि हमारे एनालिसिस के हिसाब से जितने भी इन्वर्टेड ड्यूटी के कंप्लेंट्स थे एग्जामिन कर लिए हैं और उसके बाद उन्होंने फाइंडिंग्स दे दी हैं। तो आई डोंट नो आपका उस समय में ये मुद्दा था पाउडर और फेराइट्स का, या ये कोई नया मुद्दा है इन्वर्टेड ड्यूटी का, क्योंकि उन्होंने सारी चीज एग्जामिन कर ली है। कस्टम्स ने जो भी इन्वर्टेड ड्यूटी के जितने भी रिप्रेजेंटेशन थे उन्होंने अपनी फाइंडिंग्स दे दी।
हमारा नया नहीं है तो पुराना ही है बेसिकली।
तो मेरे हिसाब से कस्टम ने ऑलरेडी इसको एग्जामिन कर लिया है और हो सकता है कि उनकी फाइंडिंग हो कि इट इज नॉट अ केस ऑफ इन्वर्टेड ड्यूटी, बट अदरवाइज तो इसको चेक करना पड़ेगा। आप ऐसा कीजिए, आपका EPC का हु इज द कमोडिटी फॉर कॉमर्स में, मिस्टर नरोला, आप किससे जॉइंट सेक्रेटरी का?
सर मिस्टर अरुण गोयल।
हाँ, तो आई थिंक सो मिस्टर अरुण गोयल को आप एक रिप्रेजेंटेशन दे दीजिए, को एक कॉपी दे दीजिए, because finally it will land up in customs for the inverted duty examination, and they can tell whether they have already done this kind of exercise. Thanks.
Now, can I request Prashant Jain to ask the question?
Yeah. Good afternoon, sir. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, please go ahead.
I'm Prashant. I'm from Tejas Networks. So my question is regarding the certificate of origin which are issued in India. So like many of the projects which Indian government is funding under the LOCs and grants, so they are governed by the EXIM policy ideas. And ideas go by the certificate of origin for supplying all the products under all these projects. So what it happens is like we see that in all these projects, the imported goods purchased from India with a certificate of origin by doing some amount of value addition in terms of assembly and all. So they are getting qualified as Indian. But we have seen in DPIIT policies and all, the amount of value addition required for a product to be called as Indian is minimum 50%. So what we say is, can't certificate of origin also specify the value addition in that product so that it clarifies for all the bidders or the suppliers for what they are doing, and also to the EXIM who qualifies that product to be Indian or foreign?
सर्टिफिकेट ऑफ ओरिजिन का प्रिंसिपल में वैल्यू एडिशन, डोमेस्टिक वैल्यू एडिशन क्या है, दैट इज अ पार्ट ऑफ दैट बेस्ड ऑन द डॉक्यूमेंटेशन, दैट इज वन पार्ट ऑफ इट. The issue which you are saying is people who are getting this the certificate of origin for various projects outside the country, whether they are domestic manufacturer or they are not, is a separate issue. But as long and let me tell you, the recommendation for certificate of origin comes from the ESC itself, if I'm correct. So to that extent, the certificate of origin, and then it will vary from the kind of agreement we have with countries. The preferential trade agreements may vary from ASEAN to SAFTA to some other to India, Korea, or India, Japan, which may be largely we have the same principles, but it may vary from a trading partner or trading bloc. The certificate of the value addition and the change in the tariff had issues, how we have agreed to for to agree on what is Indian origin for the purposes of entry into the other countries' market.
Okay. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Now may I request Vani Gururajan to ask the question.
Good evening, sir. My question is with respect to the production-linked incentive scheme. So since the focus in this scheme seems to be production, right? What happens to companies who are who basically own the IP, intellectual property of a product, but because of maybe cost issues or because of scale issues, they have outsourced the manufacturing of maybe the board or significant part of the product manufacturing is outsourced. So therefore, the company may not have a manufacturing plant, but once the product is received from the EMS, which is the outsourced EMS and electronic manufacturing partner, all the other value addition, whether in terms of the firmware and the final assembly and then the final manufacturing, quality checking, etc., is done at the company and then it is exported or sold domestically. So will PLI schemes extend to such activities also? Or is that being consciously being left out? Because in the past we have seen there's a lot of focus in some of the other schemes on manufacturing activity rather than just the export activity.
I think so. The name itself very clearly makes it that it is a production-linked incentive scheme. And then the production is obviously not on the intellectual property, but also on how much is the production which has happened, manufacturing which has happened in the country. Detailed guidelines have come out now. I think so we finalized it 3 weeks back, months back. Those are now available for the sector with regard to the mobile. So those I think we need to go through it. But from what you have said, I can say very safely that it is not available only for a company which has owns an intellectual property and outsources the EMS company.
Thank you. I think we are running short of time. I will not be able to take more questions. So I would request members, if they have got some questions, please send to us and we'll compile the questions and send to a DGFT office. Now we have towards the end of the program, may I request Mr. Gurmeet Singh, ED ESC, to propose vote of thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On behalf of the Electronics and Computer Software Export Promotion Council and its over 2,500 member exporters, it's my proud privilege and to propose a hearty vote of thanks to our chief guest this evening, Shri Amit Yadav ji, Director General of Foreign Trade, Government of India, for kindly acceding to our request to interact with our member exporters from the electronics and IT industry. Sir, you have indeed left an indelible mark while addressing the participants today, and your patient hearing to the issues of our member exporters and words of encouragement have committed us in the councils to work more assiduously and propel India's ICT's exports to achieve greater heights. There could be a few more issues. We have compiled the issues, and we will request our members to kindly share the same with us, so that we can put that to your consideration and necessary action at your part. Sir, the council shall remain grateful to you for having spared your valuable time, support, and matured guidance provided by you today. Today, humanity faces perhaps a trial of its time as COVID-19 grips the world with deadly embrace. Everywhere, as also in India, the mission is to do whatever to take to prevent the curve from stepping any further. As we know, the father of the nation, late Shri Mahatma Gandhi, spoke in October 1931 in Kingsley Hall. In the midst of death, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists. In the midst of darkness, light persists. Recently also, our Honorable RBI Governor has said recently, human spirit is ignited by the resolve to curb the pandemic. It is during our darkest moment that we must focus on the light. Same way, our MSME, electronics and IT industries look for the remedies for the light in these turbulent, dark times. With these words, we sincerely thanks once again to our chief guest this evening, Shri Amit Yadav ji, for giving us his valuable time and setting the agenda for us to move forward. We hope that today's meeting will help in sorting down the problems being faced by the industry and create a healthy environment in the country, both for manufacturing and exports. Thanks are also due to all the member participants and our esteemed speakers this evening from the industry and fraternity, electronics fraternity, for being with us today and their enthusiasm to collectively take the electronics, hardware and IT industry ahead. Thank you so much, sir, for your time today. With these words, let me call the session as closed today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for being efficient on time, and thanks to all the members and participants for a very, very healthy interaction. And I think so we can continue with that. And especially to Mr. Kohli to get well soon. He's a dear old friend. So thanks, and thanks, Mr. Sharma. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.